Hello, everyone. I am Brian Love, head of banking and fintech at Travillian. Today, I am joined by Brent Beardall, CEO and president of WaFd Incorporated out in the great state of Washington. How are you, Brent?
Doing fantastic, Brian. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, and we already covered football and our respective, Eagles love on this side, and you took the Lombardi Trophy from Philadelphia, and now you have it in Seattle. Congratulations.
It feels good to be the reigning Super Bowl champions, doesn't it?
That's nice. Hey, we felt it twice in what, 7, 8 years. I'll take it. My kids think the Eagles win the Super Bowl every, 7 or 8 years. I'm like, hey, it took like 50, 60 years to get one. So
Yeah, that's an important life lesson perspective, right? Because it all depends what you're used to.
exactly.
We've had some good fortune with the Seahawks here. On the other hand, we also have the Mariners, who I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they're the only Major League Baseball franchise that has never made it to the World Series.
Oh,
So we have been long suffering with the Mariners.
so close last year. I was rooting for them. Yeah. Well, I wanted to have this conversation. My purview is talent. Banks around the country hire Travillian to help them with succession and recruitment. And I love talking to leaders at banks that have interesting stories. Everyone has interesting stories. I think that's my number one thing. I'm like the luckiest guy in the world. I get to listen to people's stories all day, every day. And I wanted to talk to you about your story. We've known each other for several years. You came to our Travillian Next forum in Philly. You were on stage with Ira. We had a good time at that session, but I don't know you that well. There's some things about your life that I know, including, recent things that happened to you, and you've been very open to talk about. But I really wanted maybe the younger generation of banker that's watching this to hear from a leader about their rise and their trajectory, things they did well, things they wish they would have done, the whole nine. Are you game to talk about that?
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, but I'm absolutely kidding. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, the other thing I'm going to also mention to our viewers is that in about 15 minutes, I'm going to surprise Brent with a guest from his past, somebody who I know he is friendly with. So it shouldn't be that crazy. It's not going to be like your, high school teacher that didn't like you or something like that. But we are going to have a surprise guest appear. But until we reach that time, let me ask you a little bit. You were a CFO at WaFd who became a CEO. Generally speaking, the front lines are where most bank CEOs hail from. I don't know. If I had to pick, it's probably 60, 70% of CEOs come from a chief lender, chief banking type of role. Tell me about your rise in banking at WaFd. You've been there since you were 19? No, wait.
Not quite since I was 19. Thank you. No, I just celebrated 25 years at the bank, and we're a unique institution. I am only the sixth CEO in 109 years now. And so it's kind of crazy to put that into perspective. So we're an institution that is just built on stability. And I've got probably 24 employees that have been with the bank for over 40 years. And we reward over the long term. We really try to de-emphasize the short term. Of course, we all have to pay attention to it. But one of the things that's unique about us is every employee gets stock options. So it was one of the things that made us great early on. Before, you had to expense stock options, then it went out of vogue, you had to expense them. But my philosophy is, as a bank management team, if we are building the bank the way we should be doubling the value every 10 years. And if you can give your employees an ownership stake, they're going to act like owners, which is what we all aspire to do, which is making decisions that may hurt in the short run, but are the right thing to do over the long haul. And so that's one of the philosophies that's always resonated with me. Back to your question in terms of coming up from the CFO ranks. A little bit of my story. I was with Deloitte, the accounting firm, before this. So it's only my second job I've ever had since graduating college. I went to Deloitte, was there for almost 7 years, and was a manager about to go into the senior manager ranks. And I audited all over. I did some at Microsoft. I did some at Washington Mutual back in the day, which, by the way, has the honor of being the largest failure in U.S. banking history. Several small manufacturing companies here in Washington, several technology companies. If you remember InfoSpace back in the day, and the .com boom, GoToNet, some of the kind of movers and shakers back in the day, and also this company known at the time as Washington Federal Savings and Loan Association. And I was absolutely intrigued at this, what was a savings and loan at the time, because it was such an anomaly. It was so bizarre. I looked at it and I'm like, this place has zero technology. Literally, the most technology they had were phones. That's it. Phones and fax machines. Besides that, the ledger for the holding company was on a tall, cheap tablet, and everything was basically backwards in the way I thought it should be. Except you look at the total profitability, and we were, as judged by the efficiency ratio, we were one of the most profitable banks or thrifts in the country. Our efficiency ratio was 17%. I'm like, how in the world did they do that? 17%, right? And as a result, our total shareholder returns through the years have been unbelievable. As we sit here today, and this is from 1982, so in 24 years, or excuse me, 44 years, in 44 years, our total shareholder return has been 36,000%.
Wow.
Right? It's the Warren Buffett philosophy. It's do something consistently over time. If you can produce a 10 to 12% return over time and just compound it. And we had some really profitable years early on, and it's just been quite a story. And so I looked at this, I said, holy cow, that's so interesting, so unique. And they were going through a transition of the CEO before me. The new CEO had come in, and he and I built a nice relationship.
Brent, let me ask ask a quick question. When you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up? It wasn't a Deloitte auditor, and it probably wasn't a bank CFO. What did you want to do?
I wanted to be a leader. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. My father founded a bank in 1971. The year I was born, my father founded a bank.
Wow.
Unfortunately, my dad passed away too early. He passed away when I was 15 years old. And I started working at that bank the year before my dad died. So I literally started working at a bank at 14 years old in the file room. I was filing away pink slips for cars in the file room at 14 years old. And I went from the file room to collections of all things, where I would call people up. And I think you and I may have had this conversation a while back, telling people they better make payments on their autos, otherwise the repo man was coming. And
repo.
And you find out, what you see on the surface is not what's really happening in a lot of cases. There's a lot of people that are living well beyond their means on consumer credit. So, that's how I got exposed to banking.
That's awesome. And by the way, Repo Man is the title of one of my favorite movies from back in the day with Emilio Estevez. Remember that one?
I do remember that one. Yes.
Yeah. Which I might ask you about what your favorite movie is towards the end here. But okay, so you were telling me that you started creating a relationship with the then CEO at WaFd. That's where I kind of cut you off. So please continue.
Yeah. So I at the time, and this predated Sarbanes-Oxley, right? It predated the Enron debacle. So you could actually hire from your accounting firm, from the manager level of your accounting firm into the manager level of the bank. And he said, Brent, I would love you to come on board and help us with the numbers. You're great at it, and our relationship. And I said, well, and as the controller for the bank. And I said, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I love the numbers, but I'm a people person. Right? I love the numbers, but the numbers are secondary to me. Relationships are what matters the most. And I said, probably most importantly, I don't want to be overhead. I want to drive revenue, because that's where I believe I'll be able to add the most value. And he said, and we went back and forth several times, and finally he said, okay, the controller is a position, but you know what? I'll put you in charge of the investment book. You have total latitude within our investment policy. Then at the time I was 30 years old, and he put me in charge of $2 billion investment book at the time. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. And we had young kids, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a banker. I'm going to go from working, 60 to 70 hours a week to working, 40, 42 hours a week as a banker. Now I'll be well and good. And then he made perfectly clear that there was an opportunity for me to step into the CFO role in 5 or so years. Then CFO would retire, and it would be a natural opportunity. Said, all well and good. I'll be a good banker, a soccer dad, and go with that. And I came to WaFd, everything was going great, and I was here for just a few months. Then the CFO had quadruple bypass surgery and
Wow.
said, I'm done, and literally retired. And at that point, I said, here is the opportunity to run. And I just started working like crazy. And my goal was to make it impossible for them to choose anyone else to be CFO. So they did the normal course. They hired headhunters and, built a slate of candidates and put me up against that slate of candidates. And they kind of drug it out a little bit. But after about a year, they selected me to be the CFO of the bank. And I think that was in 2003. They ultimately made that official. But at the time, I was the youngest CFO of a publicly traded bank in the country.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize that there was a recruiting firm that came in and measured you up against, the external candidates. They must have made offers to all those people and they passed. And that's why they came to you.
I had no idea they used you, Brian. Do you know the inside scoop?
No. That's awesome, though. I guess that's an opportunity moment. And what I'm taking out of that time leading up to it is that you basically said yes to everything, right? You sounded like you made, or no, did you not?
Absolutely. Yeah. You say yes to everything you learn, right? And then really one of the things that differentiated me back in the time was FAS 133. Right? How in the world do you implement FAS 133? And there were no experts. So I, printed off all 1,200 pages of FAS 133, read it, and became an expert. And literally, I'm on AICPA panels and so forth with FAS 133. And one of the lessons I've had in life and in leadership is you run towards the fire. When others are running away, run towards the fire.
Love that. So now you're CFO. Talk to me about, was there ever any doubt that you wanted to be the CEO? You wanted to be a leader, you said, when you were younger. You saw your father exhibit those behaviors, and that's what you wanted to be. Did you ever feel imposter syndrome as you were kind of rising the ranks?
Yeah, I know you of course, especially when I started off so young compared to many others as I go to industry groups and so forth. But
Yeah.
You quickly learn what you know and what you don't know, and then focus on learning more of what you don't know, and try to find those people that are your mentors to learn and grow. And so much of life is trial by fire. Right? You go through. I was in the role for 5 or so years when all of a sudden it was the boom times, and everyone was doing the pay option arm. Why in the world do you not? If you're in the mortgage lending business, would you not do the pay option arm? I think at one point it was like 85% of all mortgages were pay option arm. And I ran all the models. I looked and I said, this is nuts. You are taking interest rate risk, which banks struggle to manage, and you're putting that on the consumer. And really what you're doing by putting it on the consumer is just exacerbating the credit risk. And you can't say over a short period of time, look, the consumer has it, it all works great. You have to test it through the cycles until you get it right. It's easy to be a rock star over a short period of time. It's really hard to be a rock star through the cycles.
Yeah, I'm still picturing you with the printout of 1,200 pages. I feel like you probably still remember some of those pages by heart. By the way, well, so leadership again. Run towards the fire. Who was the biggest mentor within the bank for you? And then who was the biggest mentor maybe outside of the bank for you?
Yeah, so probably the biggest mentor within the bank was the CEO. That was 2 CEOs before me. His name was Guy Pinkerton. He also came from the accounting ranks. We've long been an institution that we've been, total shareholder return is number one, right? Unless your shareholders happy, you can't make your employees happy, and you can't make your customers happy. So they're all constituents, but you're weighted towards figuring it out for the shareholder. So he was a huge influence in my life. And the first day I started, I'll never forget. He looked at me and he said, "Okay, Brent, you're going to be dealing with numbers that you've never imagined you'd be dealing with." He said, "Treat the bank's money like it was your own." Right there, we the acronym OPM, other people's money, and that's one of the biggest problems with government we have today. It's one of the biggest problems with lending. When you're evaluating a loan opportunity, are they spending their own money, or are they spending other people's money? It's not just how much equity is in the deal, how much of their equity is in the deal. And he was hammering home that I needed to really take ownership of the expenses. we had a long tradition of every single invoice that was paid was reviewed by the CFO all the way through, I think it was 2015. From 2001 to 2015, I reviewed every single payment that was made at WaFd. Zero-based budget. You know what's happening. You question everything. And we can talk about that. You can go too far, right? Because you want to make sure you're spending enough to invest. And when you're running a 17% efficiency ratio, you're not building a franchise for the future. That's just reality. You don't have any bench strength at all. You don't have any redundancy. And so you have to find the balance. There's been lessons throughout there. But so Guy Pinkerton was the one, and he said to me after kind of explaining to me, keep your eye on the ball. But he also said, never forget you can always pump gas. I'm like, what in the hell does that mean? And he was raised by
I get it, right?
Yeah. He was raised by a single mother, and his first job was pumping gas.
Yeah.
And that was his way of saying, stay humble. We all put our pants on one leg at a time every morning and never lose sight that, you know what, this isn't everything. There's a lot more to life, and you can always go pump gas and make a difference in people's lives. And to this day, I enjoy getting out there doing yard work. Doing some woodworking on the side. So we're just doing something tangible. So much of what we do is intangible. And I think it is a human need, at least from my perspective, to do something that gives you tangible results.
By the way, when I decided to jump into recruiting, I took a little bit of a leap of faith. I had been a community banker for a decade. I ran branches. I did commercial lending, but I always in the back of my mind thought, and my dad told me not to go into recruiting, by the way, but I defied him. But I always thought,
Brian, how's it working out for you?
Hey, 10 years later,
There you go.
So yeah, it's been great. And he told me before he passed away, by the way, he told me he was proud of me, and he told me that I made the right decision. So that meant the world to me. But I always thought I could go back to banking. Like, if this doesn't work out, I can go back to banking. And I tell my wife, she's looking for a job. Like, the secret is, like, you don't have to stay in a job. Like, the psychology is you get a job, you have to keep it. But you can do whatever you want, like, right?
I mean, no, that is the secret. I'll take one other step. Love what you do. That's the secret. And if you don't love what you do, go do something else.
Yeah.
Don't stay put. Go find what you're passionate about.
Yeah. When I look for people, even when we hire at Travillian, we're a small company, I look for people that are like kind of obsessive about things. It doesn't have to be banking. But if I know that you can be obsessive, that's like, I got obsessive about community banking. Like, I literally read S&P and I look at banks all day and I just like obsess over it. It's weird, really weird. And movies, I obsess over movies the same way. That's kind of what I look like when I hire people at Travillian. What do you look for when you hire at WaFd? And I know I asked you another question we didn't even get to, but we're moving on.
We're moving on. Really, I look for people that have strong character. And how that manifests is different in every individual. But I really want to get to know their character. I'll never forget when I was getting interviewed at Deloitte. One of the partners asked me, "Why in the hell should I hire you? You're just a Mormon kid from BYU like everybody else." I said, "Get to know me." All right. I mean, everyone has their story. And you and I were talking about it earlier. It's so interesting when you really get to know people and they let down their guard and tell you their story. What makes them great? What is it that there is their North Star that drives them?
Yeah.
Right. And we can teach a lot of things, but someone's character, it is who they are. And for the most part, my experience is most people are high character, high integrity, high character. There are a few bad apples out there, but get to know them. And if it's somebody that's high character, highly driven, let's go.
Yeah. And that's so interesting thinking back to the young Brent Beardall advocating for themselves at a young age. You're just a college kid. Like, that's a good message to some of the younger leaders. Like, prove it, show your interest. This younger generation is, and I have a 13-year-old and a college freshman. Sometimes they have trouble advocating for themselves. They're a little bit more introverted and reserved. Then they see me and I'm like bouncing off the walls, meeting people everywhere we go. But I do think that connection is something that needs to be like, you need to experience things. And I love that. Yeah.
You do, and be proactive about it, right? That's my biggest When people say, oh, yeah, I just graduated from college, how should I go about finding a job? I said, the last thing you want to do is wait for an opening.
Yeah.
That's the last thing. What you want to do is say, okay, where do I want to be? You name it. You want to be at Microsoft. Look at all the information about Microsoft out there. Study Microsoft. Know it inside and out. You want to be in the HR team? Go meet with the head of HR at Microsoft and talk to him about what they're doing. Say, hey, I'm writing a white paper. Would you mind if I ask you a few questions? One thing will lead to another. You have to take that initiative and show that you're willing to put in the investment up front, and the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want.
Well, it's not even just advocating. It's like you have to be smart about the connectivity. That's really how jobs and opportunities are created, through a connection, a mutual connection, or someone who might be able to do you a favor, or, and sometimes, again, I guess that comes down to advocacy too, but that's the power of relationships. And that's obviously the power of banking. Now,
but before you go there, and I know you're going to bring in a surprise guest, but before you go there, the power of networking, the power of connection, the power of relationship, it can't be superficial. You have to have substance to it.
Yeah.
People think networking, okay, go to this social event, superficial. That's getting your foot in the door. You have to have substance behind it. Back to my example, you went to Microsoft, interviewed with the head of HR. You need to know your stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't know your stuff, if you don't have substance, it's a waste of time.
Yeah. And make your presence known in a kind way. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate, I feel like we could keep talking about your career. We didn't even get to the current moment and all the M&A that you've done and so many other interesting things. But I guess I need to now text Open Sesame, or whatever the magic word is, for our friend to join. She's probably sitting there by her phone like, oh my God. So this is really exciting, Brent. I guess I'll set it up. I just texted her to join. And WaFd has been a fairly acquisitive bank. And I thought this could be an interesting moment for us to bring someone on who has been part of that. So anyway, well, let me ask you, what is your favorite movie, though, as we wait, Brent?
Favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption. No coincidence, The Banker and Shawshank Redemption.
There you go. Oh, Andy Dufresne was the banker, right?
And Andy Dufresne. There are so many life lessons in Shawshank Redemption. Oh my goodness, you're gonna bring me to tears.
Oh,
here's our surprise guest, Brent. Hi, Simone.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Brent. Good to see you.
Simone, so great to see you.
Well, I set this up. We were talking about Brent's career and his rise to CEO at WaFd, and I talked a little bit about M&A. And Simone, maybe you want to introduce yourself to our viewers and how you know Brent.
Sure. So my name's Simone Lagomarsino, and I was the president and CEO of Luther Burbank Savings from 2019 until we sold it, and we sold it to WaFd, and that closed in February of 2024. And Brent and I had been set up, so to speak, by the matchmakers in our industry, which are the investment bankers. And so we were introduced by Caspar from Piper Sandler, who had met with Brent at one point, and shortly after came to meet with me, and he thought, maybe there's something there. Do you want to take it over from there, the rest of the story, Brent?
First of all, Simone, so great to see you. Thanks for joining in. Brian, you need to know this. Simone is more than a former coworker. She's my sister, and I love Simone. There's no two ways about it. We've been through a lot together, and it's wonderful to have you in my corner. And I would do most anything for Simone. So,
mutual. It's mutual. I just need to say that.
It's a love fest here. I love it. And you guys have seen Andre Bocelli together, I hear, as well.
Andre Bocelli, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, all these things, right? But no, we had occasion to meet, and it was one of these investment banker conferences, and we went off site to dinner, and it was just really fun as we started going down just the different kind of values we both have in leadership, and what's important in banking, and what's important in life. And we're like, we are just aligned in lockstep. And when you go through mergers and acquisitions, you have to have not just compatible partners, but you have to have complementary partners. How can 1 + 1 equal more than 2, because if it equals less than 2 or 2, there's no point in doing it. And we were able to quickly see where we could be accretive to one another. And really, from that point forward, Simone was nice enough to make the introduction to her chairman of the board, and we built a wonderful relationship with Mr. Victrioni. And to this day, still, he's one of my best friends. I love my relationship with Vic. And one of the reasons that I work so hard is I know Vic has kept a significant stake in WaFd, and I don't want to let him down. It's personal. And we quickly, from my perspective, came to an agreement that this would be a really good thing for our shareholders, for both organizations and our employees. Let's go. And we, quickly made the phone calls to regulators. We thought everything was going to be pretty cut and dry and move forward. And then we started off a very drawn out process. And I certainly didn't help the thing, as I had that plane accident in the middle of the process. And that's a whole other story we could go into in terms of the love and support Simone and her team showed me. And I'll never forget some of the phone calls we had, some of the tears that we shared with one another. But
by the way, Brent, Simone mentioned to me that you were in the hospital. And Simone, I don't mean to steal your thunder if you want to tell the story.
So our first communication after his accident, he was in the hospital, and his wife at the time was holding the iPad in front of him because his hands were all bandaged and his face was bandaged. And he said, "I just want to tell you that we're still very interested in doing the merger." And I think I said something like, "Shut up already." That's like the last thing we want to focus on. We want to focus on you and you getting better. And oh my gosh, but that, quite honestly, that speaks to the character and trustworthiness of this person. He wanted to reassure me, and I'm like, no. let's turn this around. You just went through he went through such an unbelievable accident, and I told him many times he's a miracle. It's a miracle he survived, and he is a miracle, and now he is spreading love in a lot of different ways, and that's the beauty of him and who he is.
Oh, you are too kind, and I remember that call very, very well. And I'm like, please don't let me scare you off, because I don't look very good now, but I looked a lot worse then. There's pictures to prove that, but it was, we just kept pressing forward. And I think we had submitted the application right before that accident or something around, and it ended up being almost a year and a half from when we submitted the application to when we finally got regulatory approval. And it wasn't needed. And to say it was destructive to the organization would be an understatement. And it's one of the reasons that M&A is so risky, because once you enter into a definitive agreement, now all of a sudden you are fair game for competition coming to pick off your bankers. Your bankers don't know what the future is going to be. Your customers are, well, what's it going to look like, and so forth. And you have no definitive answer for when or if the merger will close. And we saw it was right after the interest rates started to go way up, and both of our margins were starting to get compressed. And what was really fun about the way we worked through this together, and went to Washington, D.C. several times, we tried to make our case to the regulators. But there were multiple times that both organizations could have said, okay, material adverse change, let's walk away. But that's not, we said, hey, we struck this deal because 1 + 1 was going to be greater than 2. And while the world has changed around us, let's not reevaluate it and say, okay, can we strike a better deal for one side or the other side? Because that's not the integrity of who either one of us are. And I am so thrilled with the result of where we're at today after integrating the team and the customers from Luther Burbank. And we're at WaFd today, we're thriving. Last quarter, we produced 10.8% return on tangible common equity, and we bought back, because we think our stock is vastly undervalued. We bought back 3.6% of the company in one quarter. That's great.
Amazing.
When does a bank get to make an investment that's 10% guaranteed for the rest of your life? Right? I mean, that is phenomenal. And at the same time, we're putting up just unbelievable growth on a linked quarter basis. Our active loan portfolio grew at 12% on a net basis. If you look at it on a gross basis, so including unfunded commitments, we're at 20% growth. So it's really fun to be where we're at. And then you can say a lot about this administration, but it has been very good for banks, and it'll be good for our customers and our communities, in my opinion. The capital rules that have been proposed, it basically, on average, they say for mid-sized banks, it will increase capital 7 to 8%. At WaFd and what Luther brought us combined, our loan to value is so low on both our consumer and our mortgage or multifamily mortgages, we get a benefit of almost 15% additional capital. Think about that. That's unbelievable dry powder we have to make a difference in our communities.
Yeah.
Can you tell
It's
he's
amazing.
passionate about his business? I
Yeah.
just love it. I love it. And I will say, if I can tell a little story. So we announced our merger in November of 2022. And of course, anyone, that was paying attention to what happened in March of 2023, we saw Silicon Valley Bank fail very quickly. Then we saw First Republic fail in May. Well, we had been talking with the regulators, and we had scheduled a meeting with them in May in their offices in San Francisco. And as we walk in on the Monday morning, do you remember this, Brent? We're looking out the window at First Republic Bank's sign, and they're all exhausted. All of these people are exhausted because they had just worked the full weekend to resolve that bank. And it's like, well, timing wasn't very good on our part, but we had scheduled it so far in advance we didn't know. But that was just one of the funny things that happened along the way. And they were so focused, the regulators were so focused on resolving, the two very large bank failures in our markets that they kind of pushed us to the side for a while, and we had to just keep working to keep both banks going. But I could not have asked for a better partner in that transaction than Brent. He was just amazing.
That's right there is a great example of the positivity of Simone Lagomarsino, right? Because what she didn't mention at that time, the two failures, right? Silicon Valley and then First Republic, which was imminent. It hadn't happened yet, but we all knew they were in trouble. Everyone was doubting the West region of the FDIC, which Simone's bank was a part of, we were a part of. And so we're like, do not paint us all with the same brush. And that was something that we had to overcome, that no, we're in fact, look at us together. We are a healthier organization together. So the whole point, I think, of this podcast is leadership and doing things for the right reasons. And to me, that is with the right people. And you have to make sure that your North Stars align what matters to you most. And for both Simone and myself, we want to go home at night and look ourselves in the mirror and be proud of who we are and what we've done. Yeah. Right? The money will come and go. That doesn't, we have, of course, all worked for money, but that will come and go. What matters is what impact can we make, and can we honestly say at the end of the day, we made a difference. The world is better because of what we've done. And I can tell you unequivocally that Simone makes this world a better place. Look at the track record of the organizations she has been a part of. She makes them better time and time again. And it's really fun for me to go around the country and talk to other bankers. And universally, Simone, she's amazing. I say, you have no idea how amazing she is.
You're going to make me cry, Brent. This is supposed to be.
That's good ratings. Come on, we need some tears. No, I'm joking.
It's good ratings.
Well, no, I want to just unpack that for a second, because that is kind of the theme from earlier is, where does that come from, Simone? Your deep caring for the people that you manage, obviously empathy and love and, just a giant heart. I can sense both of you have that. I have ice in my veins, even though my last name is Love, go figure. But I'm joking. Where does it come from, though, Simone?
I love to have Brent talk a little bit about this. He talks about our profession being a noble profession. And yeah. I do believe it is a noble profession. People basically entrust us with their financial future. And so it's important that we help inspire our employees to really step up to that kind of higher, goal of making a difference in people's lives. And I think when we as leaders help inspire that and help our employees feel appreciated and cared for, they turn that over to the customer, and the customer feels it. So, for me, it starts back with banking really aligned with who I am, because I felt like we were making a difference for people, whether it's buying the first car, the first mortgage, saving for retirement, saving for college. So that's, for me, where it comes from is we're a service business. And to me, that we're in a noble business. And Brent always tells us, he says the same thing. I love to hear him talk about it.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's one of the beautiful things about banking. It's one of the things that drove me crazy about the great financial crisis, right? When President Obama at the time said, well, I'm the only thing standing between you and the pitchforks to the biggest bank CEOs. Banking got painted with a broad negative brush that was uncalled for, in my opinion. There were some bad actors, but the vast majority of bankers were doing the right things, trying to help their clients. And banking is a noble profession. And we do have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the deposits of our customers. But look at the other side of it too. We have the opportunity to change the trajectories of families, whether it's through a house, a car, a business. Right. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about is we've expanded into small business banking, help entrepreneurs get started. And as challenging as it is with the government competing with us on mortgages, they do the opposite on small business. They're like, go make those small business loans, those loans that you think are highly risky. And we'll guarantee, 50, 70% of them, depending on the type. That's wonderful. And it resonates with bankers. We all of us, I believe it's a fundamental need we all have. We want to make a difference in people's lives. Nobody wants to come to a job where they're just sitting behind a computer, not doing anything of value. Back to my point where you create something tangible. This is intangible, but when you make a difference in someone's life, when you come and say, yes, we'll be able to get it done, that is why so many of these banks have low cost deposits. Yeah, you have to ask yourself, why in the world would a small business leave, you name it, $2 million earning zero when they could earn 4% today? And the reason is they don't really care about the incremental interest. That bank was absolutely integral in helping them get started, and they're incredibly loyal. It's a way for them to pay back. And loyalty is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
And as human beings, we feel that. I'm incredibly loyal to Simone. You can see the loyalty she has, right? We've got each other's backs. And you want to build that relationship between bankers and clients.
And I was just going to mention, by lending to small businesses, you're helping the community, you're helping employment, because so many people are employed in small businesses. And by giving those small businesses a chance, they're actually making a difference in their community. So it kind of doubles the effect of what banks are able to do. And I think, again, it goes back to, for me, it's a noble profession because we can make a difference in people's lives, in the communities, and in the economy.
And I think back to the old movies, and I'm a movie freak. Simone, I'm going to ask you what your favorite movie is in a few minutes. But in those movies, like the banker was like the most trusted person in the town outside of the doctor, right? And it's gotten away from that, like you said, Brent, in the late 2000s. It did get away from that. I'm not sure the younger generations look at banking as noble as it once was because of all the confluence of different things that have happened with big banks, predatory things. And so I guess I wanted to ask you both about the next generation of bankers. How are you cultivating that? Brent, I actually just saw that you welcomed a new member to your team that was just hired on LinkedIn. Just little tiny things like that to see the CEO like personally welcome you. That goes so far, in my opinion. But again, I know you're a humble guy. Tell me how you are ushering that next generation of banker in. And Simone, I'd love to hear your answer too.
Yeah, back to my point, everyone wants to feel needed. Everyone wants to feel relevant. I am never, the shock doesn't get over me when I show up to a branch or I sit down and I talk to, not just say, hi, teller, I see them move on, but I sit there at their teller station and see what they're doing and empathize. My goodness, the CEO said that they care about me. Yes, right. It's Simone and I are a lot alike with this. The best thing we can do is to be servant leaders, never to ask our team to do something that we're not willing to do ourselves, and notice and care for our teams. We are in a commodity business, right? The phone and technology, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. It's not a differentiator because it will be quickly replicated. The only differentiator we have is our people. And so we need to show our people that we care for them. And that's not just caring for them through great bonuses and giving them attaboys. That's when there's a problem, being forthright with them. If you're going to have a reduction to staff, call it what it is. Right? People respect you when you tell them the truth.
Completely agree with that. That's and I want to tell a little story again. So
Please.
when we announced the merger, we decided we were going to go to all of our branches. Brent himself went, our chairman went, I went, and we had a couple of Brent's team members. When we got to our Pasadena branch, the gentleman who is the security guard that really stands outside the door, makes sure that no one parks in the parking lot that's not supposed to be there. He had been with us for a while, and he dressed up in a suit and was very proud to open the door for us. And so we stopped and talked to him for a few minutes. And, we took a photo of Brent with him shaking his hand, and it meant so much to him. He was just so appreciative that we actually spent some time. And I always would talk to, everyone in the branch. I'd make a point of it. But it just, seeing Brent and meeting Brent and I still have that photo on my phone, by the way, Brent.
That's awesome.
So anyway, but that's you talk to everybody in the organization, and you listen. More importantly, you listen, and I'll just mention one other thing. One time I was in branch. This was before our merger, and one of the employees told me that they were having an issue with one of their customers was having an issue with remote deposit capture, and they were trying to work with the back office, but it wasn't working. So I said, okay, let me figure out what we can do. I called the people in charge of back office. We talked it through and we fixed it. And she had been working with this customer for like a couple of weeks trying to get it fixed. And it's not just because I called, but it was because I said, well, have we looked at this? Have we tried that? What have we thought? And it's really, and the employee felt so appreciated because we actually went to the branch, to visit people, but we also listened and then took it back and made a difference. So I think that's a big part of how do you help people, the future leaders. Well, we need to take an interest in people. And when you see someone that you feel is really interested in really becoming, an officer and moving up, you invest in them. And I know Brent's very active in Pacific Coast Banking School. I mean, that's a great way to invest in employees and help our future leaders.
And one of the things about Pacific Coast Banking School I love is it's not a zero-sum game. There are bankers from almost every bank there. There's bankers that are interacting with regulators that are there, right? Everyone there is trying to get better, trying to learn and expand their horizons. And I would just also augment what Simone said. When you talk to an employee and they surface a problem, it's amazing to me sometimes a phone call from me, not because I'm Brent, but because of my role. All of a sudden we can break through red tape and we can get stuff done. And the bigger you are as an organization, the longer you've been around, oftentimes the harder it is to get stuff done. And so one of my chief jobs is breaking through that bureaucracy to get stuff done for clients. And if you talk to most people that I interact with about the biggest banks, that's the biggest frustration is they can never speak to anyone that can get anything done. And that's what we have to fight, because internal controls layer this on top of this, on top of this. And ultimately people can't get anything done. And we want to empower our employees. So again, they're making a difference. They're not just, let me put into the queue for a third party to look at something after something. What do we need to do? Let's get it done.
By the way, I worked at Bank of America early in my banking career, and I'm not throwing any stones against them or at them. But I realized when I shifted from Bank of America to a smaller community bank that was only 300 million in assets, that's when I came alive. That's when I literally could walk up to the CFO, the CEO. I could learn credit just by being in a room with other people. It was like a mind-blowing experience. And then I realized, even now, 15, almost 20 years removed from that experience, made me love community banks. That community banks are actually the best kept secret to be happy with where you work. Like there's so much you can get involved in. The cultures are so genuine for the most part, and you can learn so much, even at the small guys. I mean, both of the banks you were at were multi-billion, but I mean, still, it seems like, Brent, you run WaFd, like it feels like that little bank that I'm talking about, that $300 million bank. So anyway.
Our goal is to run the bank like we're a family-run institution, right? And that's why, Simone's my sister. It's like family. This is my work family. And and it doesn't mean you can't have hard conversations, right? you need to fire somebody, you need to fire someone, but you do it for the right reason and you're honest with them. You trust, you can deal with the awkward. But, and it's one of the, I think you and I have had this conversation, Brian Simone's heard me say it before. When you love somebody, tell them you love them. Don't be ashamed of it. When you're having a terrible day, tell them you're having a terrible day, because we all have terrible days. And too often as leaders, we just put on this veneer that everything's rosy when it's not. And when we do that, those that we lead are going to mimic our behavior. And that's not real and that's not sustainable. And who's going to surface a problem to the CEO if everything's rosy with the CEO? And everything isn't rosy. We all have our challenges. And the only way we're going to get better is if we raise those challenges and we work together to solve.
I mean, just genuine. That's the word that comes out of my mind hearing that, Brent. This is really terrific stuff. And, Simone, you mentioned, inspiring people. Earlier, Brent mentioned that you have to run toward the fire. And I mean, that's great advice as well. And I thought about my children who are younger and in a different generation that might be a little scared to put themselves out there. And that's why stories like this, hearing from two veterans in the industry, I think it's very helpful for our audience. So I just want to thank you both. Simone, I know that also you've had a new chapter since WaFd, and again, it's just another notch in your belt. So excited to see what's next in your future.
So am I.
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be an announcement here, Simone. I was waiting.
Well, actually, there's another surprise guest that's going to come on. No, I'm just joking. We just keep adding people. Actually, I did want to ask you, Simone, and I'm going to just try this a little bit of a different way. Brent, what do you think Simone's favorite movie is, knowing Simone so well?
Simone's favorite movie? Oh, my goodness. Ooh, I'm going to say Grease.
Wrong answer.
No. Good movie, though.
It was a good movie, yeah. But It's a Wonderful Life is my all-time favorite movie. And
with a banker in the lead role. Right?
The Bailey Construction and Loan. Yes, indeed.
How about that, Simone? That's awesome. What a fantastic movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have been so generous with your time, especially you, Brent. And I totally, this kind of was like a surprise, and you're just such a good sport. I really, really appreciate the time. It's nice getting together with just super passionate leaders. I learned a lot. I hope you guys had fun.
Brian, thank you so much for this opportunity. And Simone, what an honor to be on here with you. And you brighten my day every time I get to interact with you. So thank you so much. And like Brian, I look forward to hearing what's next for you and who's lucky enough to be able to work with you.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you both. And it really was an honor to be on here. And it was so fun to surprise you, Brent.
Yeah, I was caught off guard. So awesome. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.